Okay, hi everybody and welcome to the SEO Kitchen Show, the SEO webinar series where SEO cooks from all around the world debate in fiery discussion to balance out the flavor of their recipes and hopefully come up with the best SEO tips for their audience. I am Magalie Rousseaux, I will be your host for today. Please welcome our SEO cooks of episode 9, SEO and Data Science Cookies. We are with Don Anderson, Brenda Malone, Britney Muller, Andrea Volpini, and that's all. I will let you guys introduce yourself. Dawn?
Hi everybody, thanks for the invitation. I'm Dawn Anderson. I work as a consultant for a boutique agency, if you like, in Manchester. I've been doing SEO for nearly 15 years now, I believe, and I'm very excited about this panel discussion.
Thank you, Dawn. I am Brenda Malone. I am a technical specialist SEO with NP Digital. We deal with a lot of enterprise multi-million page clients, so it's very fun. Happy to be here today to hopefully impart a little bit of cooking knowledge to you guys. Oh, and I've been in SEO probably about 6 years.
Brenda has the best hat.
I forgot.
So good.
Big notice. It's my birthday today. Woohoo!
Oh, happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Well, thank you. Happy to share my birthday with you guys.
Oh, that's awesome. We missed the hat memo. So good. I'm Britney Muller. I'm the marketing manager at Hugging Face and was previously the senior SEO scientist at Moz, and just love all things data science, machine learning, SEO. So really excited to be back and have some fun conversations today.
Hey, I'm Andrea. I'm co-founder and CEO at WordLift. So we try to do our best to automate search engine optimization. We build knowledge graphs. I have a lot of fun playing with NLP, and very pleased to be here with you today.
Good. So let's jump to the first question we have. Why would anyone mix data science and SEO? What do you think, Britney?
There are so many reasons. I could go on and on, but I think some of the big ones are the rich insights that you get from data science. In particular, you can be a lot more proactive by having some of these tools in your back pocket. So a great example I like to explain to people is, you're in the middle of an SEO meeting and the conversation comes up with, well, what are the questions people ask when they come to our site? It's really easy to quickly extract this information in something like a Colab notebook using Google Search Console data. So just having those things at your fingertips makes you a much more proactive and more powerful SEO.
I totally 100% agree with Britney. It just makes SEOs into superheroes. It gives them more of a capability to analyze and see the hidden patterns and things. As a tech SEO, that's part of my main job, is to go beneath the layers and find out the hidden patterns that we can to take advantage of to give our clients better SEO positioning. It's all about having the power to do more and do it faster, in my opinion.
I would say as well that as we move increasingly toward, the ultimate, it's been around a long time, semantic search, but increasingly as we move towards a reckoning of semantic search, if you like, that data science and all the tools, Python and so forth, and all the models increasingly have a massive bearing on if you like, on the arsenal that SEOs have available to them. So it just gives us that greater insight, especially as we become increasingly aware as SEOs, as an industry, of the information retrieval side of it, and kind of stop thinking of it all as super secrets and, you know, the algorithm. There's no such thing as the algorithm. There's millions of algorithms. I think having that awareness and learning more about data science and, you know, as I said, Python and all the different various tools and so forth, just kind of takes away the mystery a little bit and just makes us much more fact-based and, you know, data-driven. I know it's an overused cliche, but it's better to be data-driven than a guess SEO, I would say.
I like a lot. I mean, I relate a lot with this idea that we're getting out of the, you know, the mystery and the guessworks, and SEO is no longer, you know, something that you just try to understand with wild guesses. You can actually, you know, look at the patterns, and that's the beauty of data science. The other aspect is that I don't think SEO it's really what I thought when I started. I mean, I started late. I'm a late starter in SEO. I started in 2016, maybe 2015, but I built my first website in 94. So it's been a long time before I realized that SEO was a thing. And I'm pretty ashamed of that. But one of the reasons I realized it was a thing because I could find the patterns, and I could understand more about the fact that it's a discipline that encompasses, you know, user experiences and encompass, you know, customer behaviors and digital marketing. We shouldn't talk about SEO. I mean, we should talk about you know, a new way of looking at the pathways that a consumer has in front of a screen.
Yes, really interesting. So maybe you will have our idea for the next question. What are some of your favorite new technology models and methods?
Who wants to go first? Can I say I'm really interested in some of the stuff that Andrea's been doing? I mean, I'm really interested in a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing out there amongst the SEO community. But I'm really interested in some of the stuff that Andrea's been doing with DALL-E. and all these fake, like, pieces of art and so forth. I'm not sure it actually will help you rank higher, being able to do like fake artwork, but I find it so intriguing, and it just shows how much ultimate potential there is with these sorts of things, really.
Yeah, thanks, Nan. Yeah, I do a fake painting every day, and I broadcasted here in Via Giulia on the street. Our office is just down the street. But yeah, what we're doing now, one thing that we're testing is actually if we can improve a prompt for GPT-3 by looking at the result that DALL-E 2 or Midjourney or Mini DALL-E would generate. So we do a lot of generation of product descriptions, and so we strive to get these prompt for generating the product description. And now we are starting also to visualize with the same prompt the type of image that, for instance, DALL-E would create, and how distant it is from the product that we're describing. And that's something that we just started a few days ago. That's I think interesting.
I really like the related categories scripts that are flying around at the moment. I think that that for me is a hugely practical use on e-commerce, for instance. And when you look at, for instance, sentence BERT, and you see the massive, because obviously BERT for such a long time was seen as almost like a nice to have, and then obviously it's had this huge leaps forward in terms of efficiency and iteration. But sentence BERT seems to be almost like a quantum leap in terms of both understanding and efficiency, to a point where it's potentially scalable, not just by search engines, but by SEOs in the things that they implement. As I said, for things like categorization of related categories and disambiguation maybe of page titles, etc. So I mean, there's loads of other things as well, but I like that in particular at the moment.
Yeah, I'll just add that the Dolly stuff has been super fun. You know, it's been interesting to be at Hugging Face and kind of see the explosion of visits to Dolly Mini, where we make it accessible to someone who doesn't have access yet. So that has been absolutely hilarious and fun to watch, but also a really interesting kind of magnifier on our biases as a world data warehouse, right? Like it just magnifies the bias that it's learned. And so it's been really interesting to apply different like professions and different things and see what it comes up with. And, you know, predominantly male, predominantly white. And that's something that different ethicists at Hugging Face are working really hard to kind of address and account for. So that following that has been really fascinating. But I think, you know, there's some more basic models like sentiment analysis that can still do really fascinating things for SEOs and give them a pulse on topic spaces, on what's going on throughout Twitter or news streams, and give you a sense of, you know, how you might be able to piggyback on some of those things, or, you know, just get into different industries or topic spaces. And I also have to mention, it's been really fun to start using these different meeting transcription apps like Chorus AI, Otter AI. They transcribe actual meetings that we have at Hugging Face, and it takes notes for us. And so it'll, you know, summarize key takeaways and next steps. And then I've also been using tools like Descript for video editing, and it's been so cool. You can edit out ums and ahs automatically from video using Descript. It automatically transcribes the audio itself. So it's made my job a lot easier when I've been putting together different resources like that. But again, I think, you know, these tools are making these things more accessible. Colab, different platforms are making these models more accessible. And I think the next couple of years in SEO are going to be so much fun, just to get more access and applications applied to our space. So really looking forward to that.
Yes. And before I jump to the next question, I just want to say to everyone listening and watching, feel free to ask question at any time using the question box, and we will answer it at the end of the panel. So next question, clean data, sufficient data. How do you deal with the challenge of making sure you have good input data in SEO?
You don't. You accept that you don't. It's hard to get clean data because, I mean, if you look at the search data, it's highly questionable, even when you access to the, you know, the data from the Search Console. You know, when I started venturing into this world, I thought that there was good data, but in reality, that is also, you know, kind of a result of skewing and normalization practices, and so it's very hard to get clean data in, you know, in general. And I think in SEO it's even more complicated, because then you have all the keywords tools that they have their own way of looking at the data, and Google changes the data that they are allowed to get. And so the good way, it's always, I think, to start from first party data, what you see on the website, the logs. That's always a good practice. And then analyzing, of course, extracting everything from the text that you have. You know, NLP now, it's a commodity. Also video transcript, as Britney was saying. I mean, we can look at a video and understand the key moments. We don't need to wait for Google to do it. We can do it. So first party data, it's good data.
Anyone want to add something?
I think Andrea is right on track. Oftentimes you don't have clean data. And so to get that, initial data and avoid the kind of telephone game data that you get through different, third, four parties away, that can kind of muck things up a bit. And also, something I've been learning kind of more recently is, you have to work with what you have. And so to try things out, fail quickly, and get proof of concept, right? Experiment with something. And if you don't see traction for your end goal, maybe it's, converting customers or downloading a white paper, whatever that might be. If you're not seeing it, move to something else. And to do that a bit more quickly when you don't have access to all that data is kind of what you can rely on as well.
So you know what it sounds like? Even as far as we have advanced technologically, the whole SEO world still revolves around two words. It depends. We can't get away from that. It depends how much you trust your source. It depends on what algorithms are being captured. For example, if you're using Google Analytics data, how do you know that the visits and the clicks aren't robots? How do you know they are real people, real clients, real customers? It just depends. And you still need that last human touch, that last human eye on the data to confirm the patterns, as Brittany and Andrea have said. It just depends.
Yeah, I think we have to be very aware of sampling as well in things like GA, which is going to potentially massively skew things. And on the point of sampling, I think the key thing is to, as Brittany said, take a good set of what you have before you go nuts for it, and try and just see whether you can achieve what you want to achieve with a not insanely sized sample, instead of spending weeks on end trying to clean it and wrangle with it and so forth, and then move on if you can't achieve what you want to achieve with a set initial sample.
Yeah, also one thing here that I rely a lot on is that I try to read, presentation from the other SEOs. I mean, I read a lot of what Dawn usually does, but also yesterday I went through the Gianluca Fiorelli's presentation. Getting a framework on how to interpret the data, it's really the way to go, because the real problem is, like, yes, you need to test things and iterate fast. That's super important, but you also need to have a right framework and say, okay, I'm going to analyze these because I read these in a presentation, or someone talked about it, or that's the idea that I want to prove, and maybe works, maybe doesn't. So I think sharing a little bit of the knowledge of what is the theory behind the data that I want to analyze, that helps a lot.
And I think it's really important as well that you know what you want to get out of some data and what you want to achieve right from the start, and really narrow down the scope of the parameters of what you're after, because data can be, we talk about insufficient, maybe sparse data here, but actually sometimes you can have way too much. It's a mess, and you don't actually know what you want to actually achieve with it. So I know that when we've had conversations with data scientists and client teams, one of the first things they always say is start from the end. What do we want as output? What kind of visualizations do we want? What KPIs are you trying to what objectives are you trying to illustrate or meet here? And then just start from there, rather than just trying to be all things to all people with it.
Yes. So the next question will be more focused on what are some of the analytical skills or tools you need to do that, in fact. Andrea, do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to be very curious. That's what drives me. Curious and follow people that allows you to understand things. I think these are kind of the framework. But in terms of tools, you can use so many tools these days. I mean, one tool that I really love, it's called Orange 3. because it's visual, and it runs on Python, but you don't see the line of code. And that's I use it a lot in the beginning because it allowed me to quickly share whatever analysis with the team without pretending that they would understand the code. And I think it's beautiful because it allows you to create a pipeline in a visual way. So I'm going to share the link because Orange, I think it's a good starting point. I think we have to do more non-coders kind of things that, Streamlit, of course, it's super powerful because it does exactly that. It allows you to, bring whatever models or whatever system you have in mind to other people. And that's also, Orange, Streamlit, sharing internally these tools is, I think it's pivotal. I mean, Hugging Face does an amazing work with Space and, with the Dataset Hub, with the Model Hub. I mean, this is really our resources that, they didn't exist years ago, and they are game changers. So.
Yeah. There's absolutely loads of stuff you can do literally with Colab. I mean, I spent such a long time trying lots and lots of different Python interfaces, different IDEs, JetBrains, Anaconda, and eventually I just thought, you know what, Colab is just so much easier to use than anything really. So, growing a knowledge of Python, I think, is pretty useful in this space. I know that a lot of people are kind of moving over to they use R as well, but I know that I'm growing my knowledge in Python. The math side of it is pretty useful as well. Statistics, I suppose you don't need to have all of these, but I think there is a lot of good crossover with what we do in SEO anyway, but statistical knowledge is pretty useful as well. But there's lots of tools out there, lots of tools.
One tool that I use now a lot is the TensorFlow projector, because the TensorFlow projector is it's a visual application that allows you to quickly look at the embeddings and the cluster. So I'm using it for clustering the keywords. I'm using it for looking at cluster of images. And it's also something that I can quickly, send a URL to someone, and then they can, reason over the data. Again, it's always about sharing. I think in my experience, it's, we're not alone in working on data science. We're never alone. There's always, someone that needs to work with us, whether it's a colleague or it's the developer team or it's the client. How do we share? That's the biggest point, I think. Yeah, the projector, it's unreplaceable, and you can run it also from Colab if you're into that.
That's amazing. Yeah, to kind of piggyback on that, I think the no code, opportunities just will continue to expand, and we've seen these for a while now. And some of my favorites I love suggesting to SEOs is Monkey Learn. You can literally import this into your Google Sheets and do some really cool NLP right within your Google Sheet. Hugging Face released an auto train. So if you don't want to touch a line of code and you want to train an NLP model to, let's say, classify your specific reviews into different buckets or triage customer requests, you can do that right within that platform. And then, a particular skill, I think it's really important to have an awareness of Python and be able to kind of speak that language a bit. But I think just as importantly, pandas is incredibly powerful to clean, sort, filter your data. And shout out to Chris in this chat who has mentioned, his effort to learn Python. Because of you, Chris, I have found this resource I put together and have never shared before. So we can all thank Chris for this, but this is a pandas cheat sheet I made probably a year ago, and I just haven't put it anywhere because who knows why, but feel free to check that out. Thank you, Chris. But yeah, I think those are kind of the basic things to have awareness of. And to Andrea's point, being curious, explore that, play with it, have fun, ask questions, break stuff is the way to do it.
And do it with the others. Always engage someone else in breaking things.
Yeah. Yes.
Don't do it alone. Never
Yes.
work alone.
Yes.
That's yeah.
Okay, Brenda, do you want to add something?
Well, actually, I am a little baby in the data analytical world. I've been had my head in the back end of WordPress for so long that I am learning as much as our audience is today. I am in awe of all the resources that are being shared. So I don't even want to take away anything from what they've said. It's just amazing. It makes me want to go and learn Python when I have time. Yeah.
We are all learning.
Even though I
think
learned
it's-
Fortran, I just have never been able to find the time, but I see how important it will be going forward. So thank you.
On that point, I spend a lot of time trying to learn I do the 100 days of code. I'm on a mission to do 3 times 100 days of code this year. I'm on a streak of 172 days since the start of the year. But one of the parts is Python, and I really, even though it's supposed to be easy, I found other languages much easier. And I think that was because I was running around looking at all these different resources, and the one I found actually, which I find really, really practical and things that you can take away and apply in the real world, is one called Real Python, which is proper, actual, actionable, less theory and more, what do you want to build? Right, let's build something which literally uses Beautiful Soup to scrape a job site and extract the names of all the jobs and then add it to like a spreadsheet. So I would say Real Python is really good because it's very, very practical stuff. So sometimes you learn things and you think, well, actually, I'm not sure how to apply this. Whereas that is good. I would recommend that, Brenda.
Duly noted. I'm a visual learner, so that should be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, Real Python. I'll drop the I'll drop it in the chat if that's useful. Yeah, Real Python. There you go.
Good. So the next question, can you give us an example of a recent SEO and data science project you've worked on, used or seen and were impressed by?
There are a lot.
Go ahead.
So we're working a lot on automating text description for e-commerce sites, and that's it seems simple to generate text using the new language models, but it is not. And especially if you want to get the editorial team, the content team, the SEO team, the real value that they deserve within the process, then it's a lot of effort, because fine-tuning a model with Hugging Face or on OpenAI is not that complicated, to be honest. But then getting the people do something which is not just the reproduction of what they've done in the past, but it's something that they've never done before. It's amazing, and it's super complicated. And a lot of the AI stuff, it's about reproducing the past, looking at what we have and then creating, a projection for the future. But it never works. Even if I write a product description, I'm going to really rely on the best product description I have in stock, because I want something new. I want something different that I haven't seen before. And I have these brilliant minds that work in SEO, in the product, in the content team, and I want their ideas to converge on a new model. And AI is just an enabler of that. But that's so for me, that's really the fascinating part of our job, is to bring these groups together, right? And create something new, something that doesn't exist or didn't exist, not a replica of the past.
I'm really liking a lot of the stuff I see out there that is very practical. I like a lot of the stuff that Lee Foote is doing, actually. I think some of it is, it may not be the fanciest things in the world, but it seems to me a lot of this stuff is just literally something you could take and apply to an e-commerce site, a project, whatever. In terms of what we've worked on, we had an issue quite a few years ago, actually, a couple of years ago, whereby lots and lots of job descriptions just got dropped out of the database, 50,000 plus. And we had to like either manually retag them all back into job type. So we actually utilized a classifier, fed the classifications in. Some of them were quite similar. So they were all reclassified utilizing data science, if you like, and just to make sure they were bucketed back into the right categories without having to literally have a human go through and label them all back up again. And that saved an absolute ton of time. So quite practical things, really. Yeah. And who else's stuff? Liking some of the stuff that, is it called Corey? Corey's doing some interesting things. And obviously everybody, Britney, everybody's doing interesting things. And Andrea, and I'm sure you're doing interesting things as well, Brenda. Everybody's doing interesting things. Yeah. Some good stuff out there.
Yeah, I second all of those thoughts. And I love how, you know, the work I've seen Andrea do and Dawn, it's all very applicable and, you know, useful SEO applications of data science. And Brenda's cooking up stuff too, we know it. And so I think that's really important to kind of just keep in the back of your mind. It's so easy in data science and machine learning to kind of become in awe of the shiny new objects like Dolly and all of these things happening in the space. But at the end of the day, it's, you know, what's going to be immediately impactful for your work, for furthering, you know, your business goals and the things that you're working on. And so I've actually started thinking about how beginners might have the most powerful mindset coming into this application, because I wish I could talk to my younger self and say, like, what are the useful applications, you know, because I think I pigeonhole myself in some too technical, you know, programs, and we got to like take some steps back. How do we not over engineer? How do we just very simply apply different things to solve for something? And that's where I feel like a lot of the attendees and listeners to these talks will have great ideas and kind of refresh the space as to like, could you do X? And so I've almost, I've tried to like remind myself and make time to have a bit more fun in this space. I used to do that a lot more in my earlier career. And something I did recently was, I'm fascinated by, in America, we have Craigslist and there's free listings. And I get a kick out of how different free listings are in every major city. And so I thought, well, how do I take data science and NLP, extract the unique insights from each major city and identify that, oh, San Francisco has a lot of free ping pong tables. Minneapolis, for whatever reason, has a lot of free pianos, like old pianos, and Boston has a lot of fluorescent light bulbs and dog cages. Like that kind of stuff, it has link building fodder baked into it. What are the types of content you can create for SEO from data science that you can then offer up to journalists or to other media publications? These are things people would go nuts over. Even like recent events, like I was kind of joking about the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case and how you could have done a really cool like online sentiment analysis over those couple weeks during the trial, and media outlets would have eaten it up. Right? So to kind of have more fun and apply some of these things to your industry and to your space. And people love geolocal information. They love newsworthy insights. And so to also keep that in mind as you play around with these things.
But I think you could do, as well as all of that, which is super interesting and definitely has massive potential, those insights into the local behavior of certain listings, that I believe translates, it's the same here. For instance, certain parts of the country will have more requirement for asbestos removal because there's more asbestos in the area, more mills and so forth. Certain parts of the country would have more requirement for roofers because there's more rain or whatever. Yeah. Certain parts of the country might have more conservatories and swimming pools. So I think if you can take that insight, you could even use it to structure and really target local, the local listings for things, because it shows that you have knowledge of, the local markets and so forth.
Yes.
You could help with disambiguation. It could help with newspapers to show which, show the most popular things. Search engines know that swimming pools are more popular in Southampton than they are in Rochdale. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know any swimming pool around here, but do you see what I mean? So I think it actually adds value, the fact that you have structured your site to be more forward facing and more attuned with the actual popular demand of a local community. Yeah.
100%. 100. I love those examples too. And it reminds me, my coworker, Federico, who co-founded Monkey Learn, they put together a resource similar to what you're talking about, Don, where they looked at what are the negative hotel reviews, what are they centered around per city. So the majority of negative reviews in France were about the croissants, and in other areas in Southeast Asia it was about cockroaches. And travel sites had a field day over this stuff. It was, and to your point, Dawn, it positions you as the expert in this space.
In the local
it positions, yes, you house that information and you have that awareness geographically, and there's some really cool things you can do with that.
Absolutely. And funnily enough, you could also utilize that data to and map it with things like crawling, because, for instance, we know that crawling as well as indexing has a demand-driven aspect to it. So crawling almost is like a search engine filling up their shop ahead of a season, So, for instance, on a site that I look after, there was a huge amount of crawling 2 months ahead into a roofing and guttering section, absolutely smashing it 2 months ahead of the autumn. And it's almost like you could look at that data and know that actually we're going to get crawled over there, and actually then it would take people's mind so much off. And I think sometimes people don't understand crawl scheduling. So the likes of mapping data and demand and so forth, and utilizing data science with crawl patterns could really give insights there.
I'm looking at the title of our talk, and it's Data Science Cookies. This is an impromptu question. What do you think the impact of the cookie laws will have on our entire science as the privacy laws clamp down on what we're able to glean from our visitors? Is AI going to be more important, or have to work harder to use less intel than before? Just curious.
Tough question.
I mean, GA4 is trying to, connect all of the visits, whether you're on mobile, desktop, your journey throughout the process.
Yeah.
Is that going to make AI harder for us to glean more information? Are we at the pinnacle?
If the data is anonymized, it's equally valuable for predicting what's going to happen. The point of cookies and data protection is not about hiding for getting a poorer service. I mean, it's about hiding the self identity. Of course, it's a blurry line, and of course we have to be very, very aware of the risk of these blurry lines when we do everything online. I think the web has changed already to that extent. We're more capable of controlling, what is the digital footprints that we leave, and that's important for the consumer. It's important for the industry. It does impact negatively the ability to understand patterns. I don't think it should. I don't think it should. I think that you can gather a lot of information even if the data is anonymized as it should be.
Yeah.
Good. We'll go to the last question, and after we have the Q&A session. So the last one, are there any data science pitfalls that marketers and SEO need to be careful to avoid?
I mean, the biases in the data, it's one thing that we mentioned. And what we were saying at the beginning, the biases in the data that you see in a model like Clip, or when you start using DALL-E, Mini DALL-E, these are the same or not so different from the same biases that you see in Google search results. If you go and run queries like builder in Google Images, you would just get white males with the worker hat, and if you go and search for a flight attendant on Google Image, you will get the same stereotypes that you find in Clip or DALL-E for that matter. So yeah, biases, it's definitely one that you need to be super aware of. And then what else? Yeah, this the sense of time, the fact that when you predict something based on the past, it's a prediction, and it might not work, especially in the context of search, because things change and it's not that easy to make a prediction, even if it's now easy with the tools that we have to run predictions. But these are the two that I see.
I think it's also important that SEOs don't think that they have to learn everything before they can actually start getting involved in this side of things. As people have mentioned, there's lots of no code and low code, increasingly no and low code tools out there, and you don't necessarily have to go and literally learn every language in the sun to be able to, in programming languages, to be able to get involved in this. So yeah, to just kind of dive in and kind of learn as you go, learn the hard way, just literally dive in there and have a go, I would say.
I feel totally seen, Dawn. Thank you.
We're all the same, Brenda. Yeah, we're all the same. Everybody's learning as we go along, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah, totally. I couldn't agree more. I think that's probably the most common thing I experience when talking to beginners or people that want to kind of increase their knowledge in these different areas is just fear of breaking things or not knowing where to get started. And it was actually really reassuring that there's a MIT course on YouTube on it's on Python and like getting into data science. And the professor even notes how for some reason new students are always scared to just try things out in the terminal or run a couple cells in a collab notebook. And he's like, you have nothing to lose, go for it, give it a try. This is how you learn, this is how you grow. So I think that is the biggest barrier to entry. And again, these tools are making these models and languages more and more accessible. And I think just to remember, don't over-engineer these things. Fancy data science doesn't always move the needle, right? Even recently, I had a very interesting experience with a client where simple SERP evaluation and recognizing what competitors are doing above my client differently and how we could change things to align and be more competitive has moved the needle more than any data science model or format I've put together for them yet. So I think just to keep that in the back of your mind, it's always a balance and using it in ways that kind of support your efforts and not, kind of send you down different rabbit holes as well, which can be hard.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Brittany just said. And that's a major pitfall that I want to recognize. don't forget the human in all of this. Data sets are that, just data. You need to understand that there's a human side of everything. I feel like an episode of Freakonomics coming on. But data gives us data. There's so many influences that human behavior have on data that we somehow need to incorporate that in every piece of extrapolated data that we get. Just like Brittany said, a plain set of eyes surpassed all of data that they could have acquired for that specific situation. So don't forget the human side and the unexplainable. Sometimes you just don't know why a page isn't ranking, why something is happening, and you cannot explain it all by data. So that's one bias that you have to bring when you're relying strictly on data and data science.
Yes, thank you, guys. Time flies, and this is the end of the discussion. I hope it opens the door to more questions in the chat. We have 10 minutes, maybe a bit less, to discuss, so don't hesitate to ask your question in the chat. And I will start with the first question we have. What are some of the practical use for GPT-3?
I have a few that we do. Like we say, the product description, intro text, FAQ content, classification. I mean, you name it, you have it. But of course, one aspect I think that it's important is that you don't need GPT-3 for a lot of the cases, because you can just use everything that Hugging Face provided. Like for instance, summarization, we do it with Hugging Face in production, and it's now almost 2 years, I think, that we have it. Yeah, so there is a lot of stuff that you can do without GPT-3. But FAQ, product description, intro text, these are kind of stuff that we do a lot.
Good. Maybe I will go to the next one. How do you work around these in datasets other than being aware of them?
So if you use GPT-3, there is a command now that it's called the logit bias that we just discovered, that allows you to kind of control the tokens that are generated. And that's good because you can kind of rebalance things and remove expressions that don't fit with your corporate values or tone of voice. So that's one thing. The other thing, of course, you have to create a lot of fake data to balance things off. That's kind of the other good approach.
Something I've learned a lot too from Margaret Mitchell in particular, who was a co-founder of Google's ethical AI board. She talks a lot about how every model will be biased. We all carry bias, and we can't expect a model to perform perfectly in a very biased world, but we should account and be careful about the applications that come from that, specifically around minorities, targeted groups of individuals, anything with facial recognition and things of that nature. Extra and additional analysis and testing needs to be performed before anything should be put kind of out to the open. And some more, kind of current applicable situations like job applications, right? Like making sure that some AI that you're using to support filtering of applications isn't being biased towards the people that are applying just because you have a certain, demographic at your company. And so just being really careful about things like that. But this is a work in progress, and this is part of why it's so important to kind of continue these conversations out in the open, where you've seen traditional science really grow and prosper from. And I think we can all learn a lot from each other's experiences in this area in particular.
Yeah, I think one practical way is I just share a link to Google Facets. This is a tool that I know Brittany uses. I don't know if I learned it from her or not, but we use it a lot now. It allows you to look at the data set and see the facets, which means that you can see if there are biases in your data in a visual way, and then cope with that either by removing data or adding new data to balance things off. That's one practical way. There is another practical tool that we're starting to experiment with by the team of Gene AI, which is called Fine Tuner. Now, the Fine Tuner allows you to get a model and fine tune it to remove the biases. And it does that by adding an additional head at the end that will revise the weights by looking at the way in which you expect results to be. And this is good, especially, I mean, when you have, racial issues, or, if you want to reorder things in a different form, it will allow you to redefine the weights on a model, any type of model, really. So these are the two practical things. Fine Tuner is cool. Give it a try. You'll love it.
There's one AI bias that is going to impact us all in a couple of years, is the autonomous cars. In the future, I don't know how we will select which car we buy. Do we select it based on the programming of the developers or the data biases? If we have a choice whether to hit a pedestrian or save the passenger, how do you choose the car? Do you want the car that has been biased more ethically to save your life or to save the lives of others? I think AI, it's going so fast, and we need lots more brilliant minds to help us discover the biases, learn how to minimize them, and how to incorporate them into whatever new world this AI is going to bring us, just as Andrea and Brittany have said. It's very interesting.
I think that there is actually now whole fields developing around ethics in AI, increasingly. Responsible AI, I know that in a lot of the IR conferences, they've brought in new tracks that are literally called responsible AI, because obviously, particularly with everything that's going on in the world at the moment, these kind of things in the wrong hands, bad actors and so forth, they have the potential to literally do bad things going forward. I wouldn't say so much now, but you're right, Brenda. The ethics and the biases overall literally could just skew out of control if it's not kind of all kept on course a little bit, or a lot, kept on course a lot.
Exactly. And I think one of the culprits too is so many papers now are released without sharing data sets, and even without sharing different ways that they've come to these conclusions, which is a bit scary. And so something that we're also, really passionate about at Hugging Face, and something Meg Mitchell has been driving, is model cards, where we would love this to become like an industry standard, similar to like a nutrition label on food items. It would explain the data that was used to come to these conclusions, and it would be very explicit about the biases and different discoveries within the data, and allow for kind of more open conversations about how to improve that in general. But I think that's a really important area as well.
I think that's the challenge with a lot of these black box predictions. Nobody knows what's in there. Nobody knows why it did a certain thing, because it's kind of just self-learning and so on and so forth. And challenge.
Yeah, open source. It's really important. I mean, that's one way, because of course we need to understand exactly the mechanics behind in order to find a solution for it. And then of course, the data issue is big, because of course we don't know what's inside this data set, and we have no control to opt out of a data set. That's also, with my experiment with, doing the fake paintings, I always wonder, but what if Andy Warhol doesn't want to be, reproduced by me and this diffusion model today? Can he really opt out? He can't, because it's embedded inside clip knowledge, everything that he has done, and there's no option to opt out of a data set like the one that Clip uses for training. And that's a big limitation. I mean, that's huge, and we should we need to find ways, and open source is the way, or at least one of the ways.
Thank you. We have another question, more specific. When it comes to data visualization, what do you think about GDS?
I love it. Google Data Studio means, right? GDS, Data Studio, I would assume. I love it. I mean, it's super simple. It's immediate. It's kind of, yes, it's one of these Google products that are not too sophisticated. To be honest, you can find a lot other better tools, but it's so immediate, and it's free and accessible that we recently developed a connector for WordLift that allows you to get the data from WordLift Knowledge Graph into Data Studio, because it's so simple to bring a lot of information there. So it's definitely something to experiment more. I kind of forgot about it for some times, and then I fell in love again. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's so much potential in Google Data Studio. I've only scraped the surface, but just recently set up automated reporting through Screaming Frog and Google Data Studio. And through that, I was able to hook up page speed insights just through the API. I'm also bringing in Search Console, and I think 1 or 2 SEO tools as well. So that allows myself and a client to be a bit more proactive. So within Sheets even, I can set up an alert system where, let's say, if number of indexed pages drops within our blog, which was something I was concerned about, I get notified of it. So and same with page speed. We can be a bit more proactive as SEOs and less reactive in having different systems and dashboards like Google Data Studio set up to kind of keep us on top of the current health of a website.
Yes. So, Dawn, do you want to add something, or Brenda?
No, I agree with Brittany. I think the one best thing that happened 2021, 2022 was the Search Console API. That was just Google opening that up wide open was just brilliant. It allows us SEOs to look so marvelous. And using Data Studio, it's understandable information presented fast and easy. Google Data Studio, Search Console, and GA connectors are just brilliant. Thanks for asking that question.
Yeah, I think it's great to be able to build, if you like, almost like dashboards on a need to know basis for those maybe that are not, they don't want to spend their life in Google Search Console, or they don't want to spend their life in analytics. So to be able to pull something together, everything with various connectors, and just have a very high level, if you like, as I said, dashboard for senior decision makers, etc., is really good. Yeah, no, I like it.
I have a quick question too. So in kind of piggybacking off of that, something that I've experienced, and I'm dying to know if any of you have experienced as well, is the amount of data I can get from something like the Google Search Console API compared to the platform itself is orders of magnitude. I mean, when we're working with really big sites, it's not even close. And I understand that they have to prioritize what they show in Search Console, but I think, if you're working with the large websites, it's advantageous to be using the API to get as much data as you can.
imperative.
Yeah.
Imperative.
Yeah.
The only one thing I would say about that is I do like the fact that you have samples. The samples in Search Console are an indicator of kind of importance. And when
Yeah.
you are overwhelmed with so much data as you get through the API, for example, it doesn't have the same, it's not providing you with the same sort of prioritized insights, if you like, almost. Yeah. So
Yeah.
the fact that there are descending order samples, the samples provide pattern clues for me, types of content that are not getting indexed or whatever. Whereas when you just, it's almost like you've got a fire hose all of a sudden, you don't necessarily have the same sort of easy insights, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, thank you. Thank you everyone for your time and for joining this show. This was the very last episode of the SEO Kitchen Show. We hope you enjoyed this webinar series as much as we did. I wanted to say another big thank you on behalf of the whole Oncrawl team to all the speakers involved. Brenda, Britney, Dawn, and Andrea. It was a pleasure to be with you today, and I learned a lot of things. Thank you very much. And the recording of the webinar will be sent to you in a few days, so keep an eye out. Thank you, guys. It was really nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.